Hey everyone, good evening. How are you? So today is day 21 of the video day challenge. I think yesterday I tagged my video wrong and said it was day 21 when it was day 20, so I don't want to cheat on my 30-day challenge. But I'm here today because I want to talk about acknowledging where we have come from in order to appreciate where we are right now. And so I had posted in the Facebook page asking for suggestions on what I should talk about tonight. And so somebody had asked me to talk about kind of my childhood and how I grew up. My aunt was asking me about, hi Auntie Penny, asking me about, how did I make it through my schooling, my university with such bad anxiety. And so that's what I'm kind of going to talk about tonight. So first of all, this is probably going to get me emotional because I'm going to be talking about my mom and dad, and I miss them a lot, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them in a few weeks. And yeah, so I think, when I look at where I am right now and the person that I am, I have to acknowledge my childhood. And I had an amazing childhood. And I have the most amazing parents. They are still married, very much in love. And I'm going to tear up talking about them. And they've taught me some really major things that I want to share with you today that have really formed me into the person that I am, and have made me the successful person that I am. And so really, the first thing I think, I grew up in a pretty small town, and when I think about the pivotal moments in my childhood, the first was when we moved from the city of Thunder Bay to Sioux Lookout when I was 6. That was a huge transition for a variety of reasons. My mom went from being a stay-at-home mom to, being a working mom. We went from a big city to a small town. And so I remember that being very pivotal in my growing up. When I think about, my parents as human beings, they are, incredible. The thing I think that, my siblings and I don't necessarily agree on a lot of things. I am the oldest of 3 people. So I have two younger brothers. We're all a year apart. We're all very different. I've always kind of seen myself as a bit of a black sheep of the family, and my dad kind of always jokes about, kind of where did you come from? You don't smoke, you don't drink, you don't swear. I don't embody, the redneck that I was grown up with, but I take a lot of pride in that because that really informs me into being a really approachable person. For a variety of reasons that, that living in that small town, I think there's a couple of things that my parents really instilled in me that have made me successful. And the one thing that I can say right off the top of my head is that my brothers and I have hearts of gold, and we love unconditionally. And yeah, we see the good in everyone. And my brothers, now that they've aged, they're a little bit more jaded and grumpy, but, I see that in them, and I see that in myself, and we get that from my father. I think that's what gives us, my dad says he has heart, right? He's really proud of that. And he has passed that on to his children, and that has made us incredibly compassionate people. The other thing is, and just ignore the tears, because it's a lot. It gives me a lot of pride to be able to talk about my parents. The other thing that they instilled in me is they're very hard workers, and
they've been through a lot in their lifetime, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they've stood by each other regardless. And they are such incredibly hardworking people, and they will give you the shirt off of their back and help anybody in any way that they can. And I learned that at a very young age. My grandparents owned a hotel, and I remember getting an offer for a job from my grandmother when I was about 10 years old. I was in like grade 5, and that wasn't my first job. I had a paper route already, and that work ethic started at a very young age. And I started washing dishes in the hotel in the summertime, 6 days a week, from 3:30 in the afternoon and until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I peeled potatoes. I'm an awesome potato peeler. I peeled a lot of 5-gallon pails of potatoes, and I learned from a very young age the importance of working hard, being trustworthy, being on time, being dependable and accountable, and the worth of $1. And I thank my parents for that. I thank my grandparents for that. And I guess the other piece of that is that those qualities is what has served me well throughout my life. And that deep, profound amount of respect that I have for my parents, and that I've always had for my parents, and always wanting to really make them proud of me. So I have to acknowledge that. Certainly, I mean, as all kids, there's things in our childhoods that we, wish didn't happen. But when I look back on my childhood, I can say hands down that I had an amazing childhood, and I don't know if we were rich or we were poor. I mean, we had our needs met, and no, we didn't go on fancy vacations, but we did cool stuff. I mean, we hung out at camp, we went fishing, we rode more four-wheelers, and we played outside, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for those experiences. I think, I remember, I started to suffer from anxiety and depression when I was in high school, and started really delving into work. When I was in high school, I went to school full time and I worked full time. So I worked at a grocery store, and I would work in the bakery before school. I would go into work at 5 o'clock, and I would work 4 hours, and then I'd go back after school and work. And I did that because I was really struggling with my mental health, and staying busy was really, really important. And part of that pivotal moment for me of a change in my my mental health was the separation and divorce of my grandparents. That really rocked my world. I mean, I idolized them, and I idolized their marriage, and it was the first time in my life that I had been really, truly disappointed by an adult in my life, and that was my grandfather. And, things got really ugly after that, and I had to witness a lot of really not nice things towards my parents, and had a lot of feelings around that. And I don't regret those things because those things made me into a better person. But I remember, quite frankly, that, getting out of high school, because I didn't enjoy high school, I didn't really fit in. I was so incredibly shy and just wanted to, dissolve into the wall paint so I wouldn't be noticed. I worked, I got good grades. I was geeky. I curled. I wasn't part of the cool kids. And so I was really inspired to go to university. I was really inspired because, nobody in my family had gone to university. My aunt was really the only person that had gone on to get further education. And I was so inspired by her.
And I also knew that in order for me to get out of my small town, which I felt very suffocated by, I felt like I didn't fit in, I had to go to university. I had to do something, and I really wanted to be a doctor. And I chose my university not on where I got in. I chose it because I wanted it to be the farthest place away from Sioux Lookout. Because at that time I just needed to spread my wings. But obviously that anxiety followed me. And what most people don't know is that I almost failed out of my first year of university. So I went to university and I took biology because I wanted to be a doctor and I needed a science degree. And I had a real awakening when I got there, because I didn't have to necessarily work that hard in high school, and I got quite good grades, and I really honestly didn't know how to study. I really had never been taught how to write an essay or a paper. And so being put into 40 hours worth of a science degree plus the studying, I scrambled and I didn't do well. And I learned very quickly within that semester that it was not a logical step for me, in that there was no backup plan. I was very well aware that getting into medicine would be difficult, that I might not get in. And, what was a science degree going to do for me? Nothing. Not unless I want to be a teacher. And so I decided very quickly. I had spent a couple of summers working at our local clinic as a medical reception, and found out that one of the doctors was a nurse before he became a doctor. And I thought, you know what, this is a really good plan B, because then it allows me to kind of experience medicine, but then I have a job after 4 years. You can tell that I've always been a practical thinker. Having started working when I was 10 years old and literally being financially independent at that time, I never asked for a cent from my parents from that moment on. I bought my own school clothes. I grew up fast, but I think I was just an old soul. That's not a reflection of my parents doing slave labor. It was a reflection of just who I was, right? And though that has served me so well, however, it also makes me a little bit too serious, a little bit too much of a workaholic. And I'm starting to try and unlearn that. And part of that is I'm starting to unlearn that as I watch myself parent Molly. And Molly has come into my life to teach me how to be a child, right? Is to foster my inner child. And that can be a whole other video on its own. But yeah, so I actually applied to go to switch universities and go into nursing school, but my grades actually were so bad for my first year of science. I got like C's, and I was like an A student, which was a shot in the gut. I only got accepted into one university for nursing, and that was the University of Ottawa. And I actually got accepted on probation because my grades were so bad. And, that perpetuated that feeling of not being good enough and being a failure. But I went and I kicked ass and I did really well. Certainly in my undergrad, I had a little bit of anxiety, but it was manageable. Certainly, university is tough because you're trying to learn how to adult and you're away from your family, and, it's a lot of things that a lot of adulting life skills. But my anxiety really didn't get bad until I was nursing full time. And it became debilitating. It came to the point where I, was self-isolating. I wasn't leaving my apartment except to go to work. I was sleeping all the time. Now I reflect, and I was probably binge eating at that time as well, just consuming huge amounts of food to self-soothe. And then somebody had said to me, and I never even considered it at that time, that I had anxiety or depression for that matter, and was finally medicated at that time. I was probably 22 or something like that, and 23 maybe. And, I had never felt so good being on those medications. It was like I saw life in a different light. I was alive. And it gave me courage to actually do what I wanted to do, which was be a nurse up north. I didn't actually apply to medicine yet because I was too scared and I couldn't handle the rejection. So I didn't apply for a few years, but I did apply after I was working up north in one of our Aboriginal communities in Northern Ontario. I was an outpost nurse there, and I really felt like I could handle that rejection. I was really solid in my nursing skills. I had been nursing for a few years. I was passionate about medicine, and I applied, and I didn't get in. And I was devastated. And I was pissed off, but it was the greatest blessing in my life because I don't think I would have made a good doctor. Certainly, I love medicine, but I love the nursing realm. And I'm able, as a nurse practitioner, I'm able to do both of those, practice the medicine and practice nursing at the same time, which is what I love. But the hardest for me was when I went to do my graduate degree, when I went to go and do my master's. I was 29. I'd been nursing for 7 years, and I went to do my master's in the nurse practitioner program, and I was debilitated by anxiety. And you could have literally scraped me off the ceiling. I was in a perpetual panic attack for a year straight. And what I learned in that situation was that I tolerate a lot of suffering. I actually get sick. If I get sick with my anxiety, it becomes unmanageable. I tolerate until I crash. And that is a really dangerous place because I'm very high functioning. And so a lot of healthcare providers don't necessarily take me seriously because I have this mask and I can fake it really well, but I can be completely not functioning. And so literally I would cry every day at school or at home after I got home from school, saying I can't do this to Jacob. And Jacob was very supportive and saying, yeah, you can do it. I had a lot of fear about failing and disappointing my parents. And that was the pull that got me through, is that I knew how proud of me they would be. And if I couldn't do it for myself, I had to do it for them. I want more than anything in my life, I wanted to be a doctor to make them proud. And I didn't get into medicine, and so the next best thing was me coming and becoming a nurse practitioner so I could make my parents proud. Because I'm an overachiever, right? So just having a regular degree is not enough. I mean, I have to be the best, right? And so, so that's what pulled me through those dark times. And, when I went and did my master's, I had been off meds for a couple of years. I've been on and off meds for my anxiety, on and off. And it's so funny because, when I talk to my patients about it, I kind of give them this 3 strikes and you're out rule. Like if you've gone on and off meds for, 3 times in your life, you probably should be on them for the rest of your life. I'm really good at giving advice. I'm not really good at taking it personally. So I ended up, it was a couple days after my wedding, and I went to my family doctor and I was like, I have another year of school and I need to be medicated or I will never get through this. I won't get through it. I'll either kill myself or completely burn out. And so medication was paramount for me. And medication has been paramount in a lot of my life to be able to get me through those hard times. Certainly I have a lot of tools in my toolbox of things that I do, but I'm very much aware that I have a genetic predisposition to anxiety and depression because of my family history. I have a genetic predisposition to addiction. My grandfather was an alcoholic. I have many uncles that have struggled with alcoholism. I have a brother who struggles with alcoholism. So I come by that honestly. And it's funny because somebody had asked me, how did you not end up with an addiction? How did you bypass that? And I said, I didn't. Food is my addiction, right? And it's just more socially acceptable. I mean, I was fat. And being overweight was a way that it was my armor. It shielded me from the world. It was a way that I didn't have to be seen, I was able to hide. So yeah, certainly in those difficult times, I leaned on food. Food was, it was my comfort, because I didn't want to, call out to my parents and say that I wasn't doing well or worry them in any manner. I wanted them to believe that I was a strong, intelligent woman. And I am a strong, intelligent woman, but I suffer from mental health. And today I'm really proud about saying that, actually, because it gives me an ability to connect with my patients in a way that other providers may not be able to. It gives me a way, it makes me who I am. My anxiety makes me, makes me me. It's inherently who I am. It's not a character flaw. It's nothing I need to apologize for. I try to tell my patients that as well. So yeah, I mean, I learned work ethic at a very young age. And, I am a bit of a control freak, and I come by that honestly. I remember at a very young age, my mom would come home on Friday nights from work, and she would be up, cleaning and vacuuming at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? My mom is a very organized person. She, and so I come by all of that honestly. And, some of this I'm trying to unlearn, and I'm trying to wiggle. When I wiggle like this, it's like I'm trying to loosen up a bit because I can be really stiff. And my brothers like to poke fun at me and say that I'm square, and I guess I am a little bit. But yeah, I'm trying to unlearn that and be a little bit more fun and flowy and flirty and not come from a place of fear, right? So most of my life I came from a place of fear, and I was grasping at control, and that's why I had such bad anxiety, right? And so yeah, so that's a little bit about where I came from, and where I am today. And you know what? I am incredibly grateful, incredibly proud, and I think and I hope that my parents are incredibly proud of me. They're people of very few words, but I know, they talk to their friends, and I hear it from their friends. And so, yeah, I think that's what got me through. I think too is that I just am one of these people that are super focused, and when I set my mind to something, I never give up, and regardless of how sick I am, I power through. And when people tell me I can't do it, I'm going to prove you wrong. So those are some of my characteristics. Some of them I'm trying to soften up a bit. And some of them I'm just, I'm embracing and loving because they're inherently who I am. So I ask you to kind of reflect on your childhood and, where did you come from and how has that shaped who you are? I mean, there's a lot of evidence to say our environments are incredibly important at shaping who we are. However, my Auntie Penny just said, your parents are so proud of you. Sorry. But it's interesting with our environments because you can have twins or siblings like my brothers and I. And we're completely different. But we were raised in the same environment. And, certainly my brothers had a big impact on who I am today because, they were a bit of trouble growing up. And so in order for me to get attention, I chose the perfect route. And so that I could get positive attention versus negative attention that my brothers were kind of getting. And my brothers were they're just boys, right? And boys can be trouble. But, for me, I just saw it as an opportunity. And so that's where that perfectionism comes from. And I'm trying to unlearn that. So doing these videos has been a really amazing opportunity for me to drop the perfection, to be raw and real, to do these
videos live and take them in one take, show you tears, show you authenticity, show you vulnerability. And I'm really appreciative that you guys are watching. So thanks. And please comment on my post. Sorry, I have the ugly snotty cry going on. And let me know what you want to hear me talk about. I think tomorrow I'm probably going to talk about my coworker Jen wants to know how I deal with death and dying, because I've seen a lot of it in my career. And yeah, so how do I deal with that? How does that make what do I do to comfort? Find comfort. So anyways, so tomorrow we're going to talk about death and dying. Anyways, have a good night. See you later. Bye.